Carry on Constitution. Chapter 10. Evening, ship's time. David had fetched little Davy from the childcare center, and the little family was engaged in the family routine after dinner. David and Davy had done their normal exercises, and Stella had begun to read another of Davy's books, Chapter 1 of Treasure Island. While relaxing together, the comm unit sounded.
Bridge to Captain.
David replied, "Stevens here." From the comm unit, Commander Carson.
Sir, we have an object just off our path. It does not seem to be natural and is barely detectable by our sensors.
David replied, "Distance?"
About 2,000 kilometers, sir.
Came the reply. David thought, it might be another dead object. In response, David commanded, "Halt at 100 meters, have engineering activate the life pulse, record date, time, coordinates, and return to speed and course. Monitor object's activity until out of range."
Aye, sir.
Came the reply. David and Stella put little Davy to bed. They stood and smiled at their little boy, David, with his arm around his wife. "Honey, I'm going to the bridge to see what we are coming close to. I'll be back in about an hour." Stella scowled, but said,
"Okay."
On the bridge, David asked what they knew about this new object. Joel replied,
Not much, sir. We did as you ordered. But as far as monitoring the object as we fly away at ultralight 14, we just don't have time to see a lot.
David studied the monitor and instruments. "Wait a minute, it seems that we are being followed. Followed at ultralight 14 and a half if half were to exist. But the object is following and overtaking us. All stop."
I'll stop. Aye.
Came the reply. The object raced up to the Constitution and came to a halt. Communications said,
"We are being hailed, Captain."
On screen, was David's reply. On the screen, there appeared a creature which greatly resembled the bear-like people from the Compendium of Worlds they had met before. The creature with the bright red utility belt spoke.
Hail, Captain Stevens.
Surprised, David replied, "Armand Sigmatog, is that you?" The Armand replied,
Yes, old friend. Can you tell me what happened here?
David wondered, "How did you get here? This is light years from the Compendium of Worlds?" The Armand explained,
My ship is one of a new design. We were exploring a new region of space when we were hit, I guess you might say, by a pulse, and we were all disembodied. Totally unable to interact with any matter. Our ship simply drifted, I don't know how far. Then suddenly, we were reunited with our body, and the ship noted that she had stopped. We were reunited and she sailed on. I wanted to catch you for an explanation.
David replied, "Armand, our mission is urgent. Come with us, and I will try to explain as we go." With that, David ordered the Constitution to resume speed and course. The Armand followed, and David explained what he could. About the death pulse, the life pulse, and the urgency of the mission. David also explained the safety of their shields. "So you see, Armand, we are out to save the universe. We are working on getting to the fleets as quickly as we can, trying to keep our ship running at peak efficiency, and concentrating on the way to stop the death pulse." With that, the Armand said that he would apply his resources to the same mission. Ultralight 14 and a half was his limit. But his engineers would work on the means of stopping the pulse. Could they communicate with Captain O'Reilly and his people for information and trading ideas? With that, David agreed. David tapped his comm unit, "Captain O'Reilly. We have encountered some old friends from the Compendium of Worlds. They want to talk with you concerning stopping the death pulse. Would that be acceptable to you?" O'Reilly replied,
Aye, Captain. The more minds we have on the problem, the more likely we are to get an answer.
David turned to the view screen. "Did you hear that, Armand?" He replied,
Yes, we can now rest in the idea that we will solve this problem.
David returned to the Armand, "My friend, we really have to move. If you can keep up, fine, if not, we still must go. See you on the other side, calm seas and fair winds." And David turned to the helmsman, "Ultralight 16, Lieutenant, if you please." She replied,
Ultralight 16, aye.
David rested, dreaming about the problem of stopping the death pulse. In his dream, he saw two figures, one black, featureless, formless, and foreboding. It seemed to cause extreme anxiety in David as he looked on the scene. He felt like death was lurking just behind that figure. The second figure was one of light. Gazing at the white figure, he could just make out the features of a man, comely, muscular, confident, encouraging. Gazing at the white figure gave David a feeling of peace, assurance, even a sense of cheerfulness. The two figures faced one another and then began to move toward each other. As they grew nearer, the black figure began to fade until only the white figure remained. Then the white figure turned and faced David.
You need to confront the darkness head on.
And then David woke, and he knew the answer to the problem of the death pulse. The solution was the life pulse. Bringing the two pulses face to face, the life pulse would prevail. David jumped up and called Captain O'Reilly. A tired, weary, even exhausted O'Reilly answered.
Captain, it's 2 in the morning, what is it? Sir.
David, very excited, O'Reilly, I have the answer to the death pulse. It's the life pulse. If we bring the life pulse to bear on the death pulse, the life pulse will win. O'Reilly rebounded to full alert.
Why didn't we see that before? I'll test it first thing in the morning.
Then yawning, he said.
See you in the morning. Sir.
David was too excited to go back to sleep, so he sat up and drafted a plan of attack to be transmitted to Admiral Halloran. The beginning of the day found Stella leaning over David, shaking him awake.
David, wake up. Day shift in 30 minutes.
He jumped up and ran for the shower. 2 minutes, sweetheart. Little Davy was dressed and eating his breakfast.
Good morning, Daddy.
David smiled as he ran by. Good morning, son. Have a good day. Breakfast over, and the little family went about their daily routine. David arrived on the bridge, and Larry shouted,
Captain on the bridge!
David replied, as you were. Larry, what's our status? He answered,
Ahead toward the fleet's Ultralight 16. All conditions, go. Sir.
David replied, great. Tall, do we have the hyperspace transceiver connected here on the bridge? Lieutenant Tall Jensen replied.
Yes, sir. Up and operational.
David handed his draft to the communications officer. Send this to Admiral Halloran. Tall replied.
Aye, sir.
Several hours later, David's communicator sounded.
Captain, Tal here. We have received a reply from Admiral Halloran.
David replied, on my screen please. The message began.
Dave, did you have a dream? I had one, black and white figures fought, but the white won. Then the white figure turned to me and said, you need to confront the darkness head on. I assumed the black was death and the white was life. We will begin to execute your plan immediately. Join me as soon as you get here where we are. I'll have navigation continually update you on our coordinates. Good job, Constitution. Calm seas and fair winds. Halloran.
David read the message. Tall, send a positive reply and calm seas. David stuck his head out and said, Tall, at our present course and speed, how soon can we have voice communications with the Admiral? Tall replied,
What would you consider an acceptable delay in the communications?
David thought a minute, 5 seconds. Tall punched a couple of buttons.
In that case, sir, in about 6 days.
David turned. Navigation. The Admiral will be updating his coordinates constantly. Don't change our heading, but keep us appraised of Admiral Halloran's location. The reply was,
Aye, sir.
6 days and David finally called Admiral Halloran. Admiral, how well is the plan proceeding? Halloran replied,
Slow, but at least we have a plan, and it is working. As we revive other races, we tell them what has happened and what they can do to help. We want them to pitch in. Right now, we have 6 fleets working to stop the pulse. Some are just into space exploration, others are more advanced than we are, technologically. I have called a meeting of all the fleet commanders. I hope that soon we will be able to go home. It's been almost 2.5 years since we began. I hope others will be able to continue what you began, Dave.
David waited, then spoke, Admiral, our dreams. I can't help but wonder, was the dream instructions or a challenge? And where did the dreams come from? There was a long pause, then.
I don't know, Dave. I don't know whether we will ever know. But we are following the instructions and meeting the challenge. Dave, meet me here as soon as you can.
David replied, aye, sir. David turned to the navigator. Navigation, input the Admiral's last location. Helm, turn to Ultralight 14. Both officers replied.
Aye, sir.
8 admirals sat in the conference room aboard the USS Halloran as David and O'Reilly were escorted into their presence. Admiral Halloran stood.
Ladies and gentlemen, these are the captains that discovered the origin of the Death Pulse, Captains David Stevens and Robert O'Reilly. Their ship, the USS Constitution, and its crew discovered the means to revive those affected by the Death Pulse.
All the admirals stood and applauded David and O'Reilly as they blushed. Admiral Kellor stepped around the table and grabbed David's hand.
Thank you, Dave. I hope you don't mind me calling you Dave. Dave. You brought Jana and me together, and you and Captain O'Reilly solved a galaxy-wide disaster. I salute you, Captain Stevens and O'Reilly.
With that, every admiral in the room stood and saluted David and O'Reilly. Both captains returned the salute.
Calm seas and fair winds, admirals.
Admiral Halloran looked at his friends.
Dave, O'Reilly, these ladies and gentlemen have agreed to continue the fight with the Death Pulse. They have said we may go home. They will finish what we began. We will return to Sector Alpha at 0700 tomorrow.
Turning to the assembled admirals, David spoke, tears in his eyes. It's good to know that there are so many good people in the galaxy. May you live, laugh, and love. Thank you. David and O'Reilly held up their right hands in the Centurion sign of peace. Admiral Halloran poured out 10 glasses of an amber liquid.
A toast to new friends and comrades. Thank you, one and all.
David and O'Reilly returned to the Constitution, and as they teleported aboard, they saw an old friend, Jana Zenner Kellor. David leapt off the teleporter pad. Jana, it is so good to see you. Then it hit him, Commodore Kellor. She smiled.
Dave and Captain O'Reilly, I'm so glad to see you two. I guess you two saved the universe.
She hugged Dave as she spoke.
Thank you, Dave. Killer and I have been very happy, and it's all your fault.
She turned to Shirley.
May I hug your husband too?
Shirley smiled.
Yes, right after me.
And she stepped around and grabbed O'Reilly and kissed him, long, gentle, and passionate. Then Jana hugged O'Reilly.
Thank you, Captain O'Reilly. David, in our fleet, we do not have a rank called Commodore. My rank is Rear Admiral First Level.
Then she smiled.
But you may call me Jana. Thank you, my friends.
0700 the next morning, Admiral Halloran called the fleet.
Before we begin our journey home, there is one piece of business to conduct. All captains and first officers will gather here in the USS Halloran's rec room in 10 minutes, dress uniform. I have also invited the Western System fleet to join us. Oh, yes, Captain Stevens, bring Captain O'Reilly with you. Halloran out.
David, Larry, and O'Reilly teleported over to the Halloran and were escorted to the rec room by a security team. As David, Larry, and O'Reilly entered the rec room, there was a command from Admiral Halloran.
Attention.
Our three snapped to attention just at the entrance to the room. Admiral Halloran smiled.
Gentlemen, please come in. We are here to honor the USS Constitution, her crew, captains, and first officer. Captain Stevens, by my authority as Fleet Admiral and Commander of this fleet, I order that as of this moment, you are promoted to the rank of Commodore, with all the responsibilities and privileges of that rank and position. And you shall continue to command the Constitution. Captain O'Reilly, by the same orders, you are from this moment on promoted to the rank of Commodore. O'Reilly, we are such old friends. Now Commodore O'Reilly, thank you for being a friend to the universe and all of us. Larry, by the same order, you are from this moment promoted the rank of captain. When we get home, I will recommend all first officers here to captain their own starship. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all. We, all of us, Southern and Western Fleet, have saved the universe, or at least the galaxy. Now, let's go home. Dismissed.
David stopped next to Admiral Halloran. Admiral, every individual in this fleet deserves a promotion. The Admiral gave him a tired smile.
That will be my recommendation to Admiral Maravich, when we get home, and I have recommended that Admiral Kellor do as much for his fleet as well. Well, Commodore, time to go home.
Aye aye, sir. David teleported back to the Constitution to find Stella waiting. She wrapped her arms around him, kissed him and said,
Darling, I'm so proud of you.
Then she went on.
I've got some more happy news, I'm pregnant. And Dr. M. Tao says that it's a girl.
David picked her up in his arms. carried her to their cabin and set her gently on their bed.